Chair of the Patient Advisory Committee of the European Cancer Organization and very, very active. I talked to her yesterday a lot. Then we have virtually, and this is the new tactic, I think that's wonderful, so that we have also Isabel Rubio, and I know her very well because she's now the president of my specialization. She is of the European Surgical Society of Oncology. And Markus Koch, he's the head of Oncology Europe at Daiichi Sankyo. So I think we should start now. And Miriam?
Yes, and this session is called Interact for a reason, because we would like all of you, however you're involved in oncology, to participate in our discussion. You can use the app, keep the questions coming, and we can try to answer them. Well, I would also like to set the scene a bit to get the discussion going. So I'm trying to get the next slide, but that's not yet. Yeah, I wanted to share with you the 4 main challenges we've identified that the oncology workforce is facing right now. And I will also give you 4 potential solutions to fix them. I have no conflict of interest, but I have taken the information, of course, from our own paper that we wrote 2 years ago and presented here as well. So the first and most important challenge that we have is shortage of staff. And this is really a big challenge, because no matter what other challenge comes your way, if you are understaffed, it's more difficult to cope with challenges. I'm not just saying that, we have data to underpin this statement. And you can see here on the slide, on the left side for you, data from the European Oncology Nursing Society, who do biannual check-up of how oncology nursing is going. And in general, the pictures, you can see them also on their website. The darker the color, the better the situation. So here you can see that we have more oncology nursing in the west and the north of Europe. And unfortunately, parts of southern Europe and Eastern Europe are coping with shortages in oncology nurses. And we also have data from WHO. They have done some calculating and forecasting, and they have estimated that by 2030, mind you, that's just 7 years and 1 month from now, we will be 15 million people short in the oncology workforce. So this is an issue, and we want to solve this issue. So we have some ideas, and we're happy that the European Commission has set good goals. In the Beating Cancer Plan, it is stated that by 2030, that same year, 90% of our patients should gain access to a comprehensive cancer center. And you cannot be a comprehensive cancer center if you don't have good specialized oncology staff. So this goal is set by politics, and that's a good goal. Also, the European Code of Cancer Practice tells us that our patients have a right to be cared for by a good specialized team. This morning, we presented to you the Cancer Pulse, and we have a section on workforce where we'll be monitoring how we are doing in that area. And we are helped a little by DG Employ, who has written a Pact for Skills that's not specific for healthcare or oncology, but it is a roadmap on how we are going to get the European workforce in general better educated and ready for the future. So solutions are coming, but we're not there yet. The second very important issue is about the lack of harmonization and standardization that we have. In general, healthcare workforce people are first specializing basically. So I first became a pharmacist. Then I trained to specialize in hospital and clinical pharmacy. And then I trained to be a hospital oncology pharmacist. This goes for every type of specialism that we have in the medical field. But this is really something that we as professional societies and scientific organizations are doing. I think it is a good development because it gives better outcomes if we have highly specialized people. But unfortunately here we are not supported by the EU because we have a professional qualification directive that doesn't cover us, and we don't have a system for mutual recognition between member states. So how are we going to solve this one? I'm trying to find where it's going. Thanks there. So a solution would be, very easy actually to think about this, to have a supranational education, because then you would immediately harmonize the standards. That will enable us to give a pan-European acknowledgement of accreditation. And of course, we have a solution for that, but I'm not going to tell you that because the next speaker will talk about Interact. We do need a bit of help here from the EU, from DG GROW, because we really think that this professional qualification directive should be updated so that we can use it more easily. Well, the third important challenge is to keep the workforce safe. In oncology, we work with radioactivity, radioactive substances, and hazardous drugs. So I brought from you 2 pictures from my own hospital, and it's like a puzzle. I want you to spot the 3 differences. And one picture is showing a nurse going to work on the COVID ward, and the other picture is showing a pharmacy technician going to compound chemotherapy. There are 3 differences, but even if you don't recognize them, you will see that there is an issue the moment that you have a pandemic, because we need the same personal protective equipment for these type of tasks. The nurses, by the way, is the picture of 2, and the pharmacy technician is the picture of 1. And you think, Miriam, this is an old slide. You've shown us before, but I'm really sorry to say it's not an old slide. I still have a COVID ward in my hospital, and I still suffer because these gloves that she's wearing, I can't reach it there, but the gloves of the pharmacy technician, we need them because they are special chemotherapy gloves and they are out of stock in the whole country. So we have to find an alternative because we have a shortage. It gives us a lot of stress. So unfortunately, we are not out here. So I'm going to tell you some solution issues. Yeah, that's good. DG Employ is helping us. They are updating the directives on carcinogenics, mutagenics, and reprotoxics, and they are including medical substances, and they are writing guidance, and they're doing that together with the professional societies, and I love that because DG Employ will make sure it's legally sound, and the professional societies will make sure that whatever is written is actually implementable in daily practice. So that's good news. I also really liked this EU rescue thing that was done by the European Commission. So I looked that up, and I underlined in red the sentence that I loved: a stockpile of medical items. So that's great, because then the next time we have a pandemic, then maybe I can still continue to compound chemo in a safe way. Finally, education. It's very important.
Welcome back, everyone, to the European Cancer Summit for this very special session on the impact of the war in Ukraine on Ukrainian cancer patients and Ukrainian healthcare professionals. And especially for this session, we will be also welcoming viewers from the London Global Cancer Week. I'm Andreas Haralamus. I'm the president of the European Cancer Organization. And a bit of history in terms of the ECO ASCO special network for the impact of the Ukraine war on cancer patients and healthcare professionals. When these devastating events took place, the European Cancer Organization immediately was mobilized to formalize this special network. And in collaboration with our colleagues from the American Society of Clinical Oncologists, we formed this special network between the two organizations. And since then, we have come to a point that nowadays we have representatives from more than 300 organizations from Europe and around the world that are taking part in this special network. Having said that, I'm really pleased that I'm going to be co-chairing this session together with my colleague Eric Weiner, president of the ASCO, who is joining us from the United States. Eric, over to you. Eric? Trying to find some volume there and sound. Eric, are you with us?
I am.
Warm welcome. I'm handing over the stage to you, Eric.
Oh, did you already? I'm sorry. I somehow missed the very beginning part of the introduction. Thanks, Andreas, and I'm very pleased to be co-chairing this important session with you. That we want to focus on what we've learned in the war so far, how we can support Ukrainian cancer patients and healthcare professionals, wherever they are in the world, and of course, especially in the Ukraine. And we're all looking forward to rebuilding cancer services in Ukraine in the future. I only hope that that is sooner rather than later. Like you, we at ASCO have been struck by the enormous support for the Ukraine that we've seen from among our members, partners, and all of the organizations in the network. It's really been amazing. And the response of the Ukrainians themselves, which I have to say, apart from the response to cancer, just the response to the entire crisis, watching it unfold has been truly remarkable. It's really an inspiration, and it is truly ASCO's honor and privilege to be involved in this. We all want to help, and the best way to do that is by understanding as best we can exactly what is happening and then responding accordingly. This continues to take both time and commitment. We all hope that this session helps the community gain some of these insights so we may better support our Ukrainian colleagues and, of course, the patients who are dealing with cancer now and in the near future in the Ukraine. Thank you for your interest and engagement. Thanks to all of the audience, and thank you, Andreas, for ECO's partnership in this joint endeavor.
Thanks, Eric. So let's introduce our panel of speakers. Here in Brussels, we're honored to be joined by the Ukrainian MP who chairs their parliament's Cancer Committee, who has traveled all the way from Ukraine specifically for the European Cancer Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Valerie Zap, MP. Also with us here in Brussels, we are joined by Anna Uzlova, who is CEO of the Ukrainian Cancer Patient Organization's Inspirational Family. Welcome, Anna, and thank you for making the trip from Kiev. And from Lviv, we are joined live by Roman Shayan, who is surgical oncologist in Lviv Cancer Center. Welcome, Roman. Just to mention here that because of the situation, the current situation in Ukraine, Roman is facing some electricity and accessibility issues. So please be understanding of that, so he might not engage with his camera. Also, joining us here in Brussels are Richard Sullivan, Emergency Committee Member, World Health Organization. Welcome, Richard. Sandra Galina, Director General, DG Sante. Andy Powey-Smith, Executive Director of Communications and Partnerships, European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations, also known as FPA. Bettina Rill, Founder, Melanoma Patient Network, Europe.
All right, I think I'm on. Maybe I've got this transition better this time. Before we started, I was actually on the Zoom with Roman, who told me that in Lviv, there's actually very little power and internet. He was back on the internet briefly and then had to go back to using his mobile unit. So hopefully he will be able to be here throughout the rest of the session. And I think, as people know, there were missile attacks in Lviv and in many other Ukrainian cities over the last 24 hours. As you can see, it's a great panel of experts joining us. One thing we've learned from the special network is how important the contribution is of every organization. So we want to hear from you. We will be having questions later in the session and keeping all of your comments for our special network discussions. If you're joining us online or there in Brussels, the Wonder Medical app brings us all together in one global conversation. I wish I could be there, but of course, I'm also joining from a distance. And you can also network one-to-one with other delegates and speakers. Details are on the screen now.
Let's start by hearing from Valerie Zab, who, as we already mentioned, is a Ukrainian MP and chair of the Parliamentary Cancer Committee. Valerie, you are more than welcome here, and we're looking forward for your perspective. Thank you.
Доброго дня всім. Я буду говорити українською. В той же час буде інформація на екрані. В Україні злоякісне новоутворення разом із серцево-судинними складають близько 13%, навіть більше, смертності. В той же час 25% хворих на онкологічні захворювання становляться інвалідами. Онкологія є тією галуззю медицини, що особливо впливає на показники тривалості та життя людини. Нині в умовах військової агресії проти України, проблем в економічній сфері, започаткована реформа медичної галузі, яка вимагає особливої уваги та підтримки всіх небайдужих. Саме тому я вважаю своїм обов'язком доносити інформацію про стан онкології в Україні на всіх можливих майданчиках. І дуже дякую всім за запрошення і те, що я виступаю перед вами. Як представник українського парламенту, я пройшов шлях, починаючи від медичного брата, лікаря-онколога, директора онкологічного центру, і по сьогоднішній день продовжую оперувати та лікувати. І я з певністю можу сказати, що знаю не тільки теоретично, а й практично всі проблеми, з якими зіштовхуються медичні працівники, пацієнти та онкозаклади. Це, перш за все, недостатнє, інколи несвоєчасне забезпечення онкопрепаратами, а часом і їх повна відсутність. В перші місяці війни особливо було це відчутно, коли були поломані всі логістичні ланцюжки. Проведення хіміо- і променеотерапії проводилися з запізненням. І, як ви знаєте, в онкології це вкрай важливо витримати ці параметри. Призупинення на певний час роботи окремих онкологічних диспансерів. На час ведення активних бойових дій деякі онкозаклади не працювали. Проблеми з водопостачанням, світлом та теплом, оскільки держава-терорист поставила собі за мету руйнування об'єктів критичної інфраструктури. І цим значно ускладнено функціонування закладів охорони здоров'я. Перебування близько 20% нашої території в тимчасовій окупації. Відповідно, деякі заклади охорони здоров'я в тому онкоцентрі не змогли працювати. Релокування онкоцентрів із одного місця на інше. І таких прикладів у нас багато, коли один центр, відповідно, переносився в інший. І під час цього викликало багато труднощів на нових локаціях. Це і пошук місця для роботи медпрацівників, це і забезпечення обладнанням та медикаментами. І тому в цей час волонтери і небайдужі люди досить допомогли нам. Я хочу тут навіть назвати, при переміщенні Луганського онкоцентру нам досить серйозно допомогли наші колеги з Кракова. Однак я мушу зазначити, незважаючи на всі виклики, які стоять перед Україною, лікарі-онкологи мужньо тримають свій фронт та вирішують ці проблеми по мірі їх надходження. Зокрема, нам вдалося зробити перерозподіл хіміопрепаратів, що значно збільшило кількість пацієнтів, які в підсумку все-таки отримали спеціальне лікування. Після звільнення з-під тимчасових окупацій заклади практично одразу відновили свою роботу, а лікарі оперують та надають медичну допомогу в часто незвичайних для себе умовах. Знаходимо все більше можливостей для направлення пацієнтів за кордон. І дякую всім, тут без виключення, всім країнам Європи і навіть світу, які протягнули нам руку допомоги і лікують наших пацієнтів. При президентові України Володимиру Зеленському було створено Національну раду з відновлення України від наслідків війни, до якої я теж війшов, і я очолюю якраз сектор охорони здоров'я. До засідань робочих груп долучились і представники Світового банку і Всесвітньої організації охорони здоров'я, чиї пропозиції теж були враховані при розробленні цих заходів. Відновлення системи охорони здоров'я в Україні має відбуватися в трьох вимірах. Це короткостроковий, середньостроковий і довгостроковий. Причому і міжнародні партнери, і національні експерти наголошують на тому, що не потрібно відбудовувати старе. Ми хочемо збудувати зовсім нову модель медицини, в тому числі і онкології. Не дивлячись на додаткові напрямки, на які держава звертає зараз особливу увагу, це і тактична медицина, це і реабілітація, я, як і раніше, в українському парламенті адвокую питання підтримки, розвитку та відновлення онкології. Тому мої пропозиції до плану відновлення України якраз і стосувались питань онкології. Це, по-перше, схвалення національної стратегії контролю онкологічних захворювань до 2030 року. Це створення операційного плану реалізації цієї стратегії. Ці два документи є надважливими. Їх прийняття призупинила війна, але вони однозначно мають стати елементами відновлення нашої країни. Наступне – це реорганізація мережі закладів охорони здоров'я, що надають допомогу нашим онкохворим діткам. Ми плануємо зосередити це лікування в спеціалізованих центрах. Це буде 4-5 спеціалізованих центрів, де буде надаватися медична допомога онкохворим дітям. Забезпечення функціонування Національного канцер-реєстру України з метою реєстрації та моніторингу онкологічних захворювань для планування протиракових заходів, відстеження динаміки та оцінки результатів дій з контролю онкозахворювань до запровадження відповідної функціональності в електронній системі охорони здоров'я. Реалізація спільних наукових проєктів з вашою організацією, Всесвітньою організацією охорони здоров'я, Міжнародним агентством з атомної енергетики, Міжнародним товариством дитячої онкології, Міжнародним союзом по боротьбі з онкологічними захворюваннями і іншими міжнародними та європейськими організаціями. Звісно, що при відновленні України загалом та сектору охорони здоров'я зокрема, який, до речі, є одним з найбільш постраждалих під час бойових дій, ми більшою мірою розраховуємо на підтримку наших міжнародних партнерів. Це стосується і питання фінансування, і організаційного, і методичного забезпечення для проведення нашої системи у відповідність до європейських стандартів. Особливо враховуючи те, що ми вибрали євроінтеграційний курс та здобуття України статусу члена ЄС. Тож в даному ключі буду вдячний за будь-яке сприяння та бажання допомогти у відновленні та відбудові нашої держави, нашої України. Слава Україні!
Thank you, Valerie. Anna, your organization, Inspirational Family, has been great in supporting Ukrainian cancer patients, and you have also been super active within the ACO ASCO network. So could you please share with us what have you learned so far, and what our network can do to further help you in your work?
Thank you so much, Andreas. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for supporting Ukraine. It's very important for us, and it's very important for me also to be here and to represent Ukraine and be cancer patient voice, because you know our patients have two wars and they fight with two enemies. So actually, the war is killing people not only with missiles, it's also killing people with additional weapons, such like a cancer, because it's one of the way to kill people. It's leave them without treatment. And now we can see how it's going on. Of course, we thought that it's impossible to have such full-scale invasion in the 21st century, but unfortunately it happened. And you know that actually war started in 2014, but full-scale invasion on 21st February 2022. We are not expected such situation, and whole world also not expected. And we weren't ready, whole world wasn't ready for this, and nobody have any solution for this situation. So that's what we learned, that the wars will happen again and over, and we have to be ready to this situation. We have to analyze all very carefully and fix all details and collect all data, because it's very important for us for the future to have solution and to provide for such situation for countries who suffer from aggressions. And in this case, also important to join our efforts to work together. When the war started, we realized that united our efforts, it's very important, and divide activities between different stakeholders. For example, in the first days and months of the war, we all could see how flexible and quick can react volunteers, NGOs, because governments can't provide such flexible solutions. So, and in this case, it was very important to work with non-government organization and with volunteers. And then we shared experience and we tried to make some solutions for the situation. And also very important to divide help and solutions to long-term solutions and short-term solutions. Very important to rebuild our system. We understand now all gaps which were highlighted. We can see now it's very clear, but also we don't have to forget about people who need help here and now, because they can't wait. They don't have any time to wait, and they need basic things. Actually, they need drugs, they need electricity, they need surgery, they need access to treatment in any steps. For example, we received information from the occupied territory like Kherson, and they also need basic things. They need generators in order to provide electricity to a hospital, they need drugs, they need water, etc. But at the same time, we received information that there are a lot of people, some patients, they leave this territory to continue their treatment, but the other part, they are undiagnosed. So we have to find them and we need a plan for this situation, because then we will have situation when people come with late stage and they're have less opportunity to live. So also, actually, I can compare war and cancer, and I mentioned it together all time because it's very similar. When you have war and when you have cancer treatment, I'm a cancer survivor, so I know about it very well. It's very similar, and when you treat cancer, it's you're very tired. Even if you have good results, you have good perspective, you're tired, and you need a lot of support. You need support financially, emotional, and a lot, because your resources are getting finished, and it's when you close to the finish, you're so tired and you're so weak, and you have so many, you need so many help. That's why I think in this summit we can also speak a lot about Ukraine, and we will find this solution. We will find long-term and short-term solutions, I hope. I thank you all of you once again, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you both for your Thank you both so much for your comments. It's really challenging enough to be a patient with cancer in the most optimal situations, when you have social support from your family, when you have medical care available to you, when you have doctors who are not in the middle of fighting another fight, and nurses and everyone else. But the incredible stress of being a patient with cancer in the midst of a war zone, not knowing if you're going to be able to get medical care, not having necessarily all your family members around who can help you, it's really sort of astounding how horrific it could be. And I think everything that we can possibly do to help patients with cancer, help professionals with cancer so that they can help patients is really what we're after. Now let's hear from an oncologist in Ukraine. Roman Shian is an oncology surgeon in Lviv. As I mentioned before, he and I were chatting initially on Zoom, both of us on computers, and then with him on his cell phone, and I was still on my computer. And it's, I think that what he and his colleagues have been going through is really quite remarkable. Roman, can you tell us what the last few months have been like for you and for other healthcare professionals across the Ukraine, and what you think is most needed in the coming weeks and months? And in truth, I think probably more than weeks and months, because even once the war is over, everything isn't going to return to normal immediately. Roman, hopefully you can hear and you'll be able to speak through your cell phone.
Sure. Thank you for introduction. Is everyone hearing me right now?
Absolutely.
Okay. So again, I'm joining my colleagues also in thanking the European Cancer Organization and everyone else who supported Ukraine for the opportunity to speak at the summit, and also for this tremendous mobilization and rapid response in the early days of the war in organizing cancer treatments for Ukrainian patients in the European countries. So I will speak as a down-to-earth surgical oncologist in Lviv, which is a major 1 million population city in the western Ukraine. We're now entering a third phase of the war. The first one being the shock, the second being the adaptation phase, and now it's sort of like the war of attrition. We're in the war economy right now. So Lviv Cancer Center is a major hospital in the western Ukraine, probably the second largest oncology hospital in Ukraine before the war. And since the war began, it became the sort of like national cancer center, taking over patients from the eastern Ukraine, from Kyiv and from other areas of Ukraine that became internally displaced people. So in the first weeks of the war, there was a period of uncertainty, but my cancer center never stopped operating. Unlike, as I said, centers in the East. We undertook a few steps to simplify the logistics and our operations. So we limited a number of cancer surgeries for a while, just to shorten the time of PACU and ICU relocation to the shelter, as we had to care for the patients for their safety, and we transported them to the basement during the air raids. We also had our staff put on a 24-hour schedule, and that lasted until the summer, as we were expecting some possible civilian casualties. And also a number of beds was allocated to possible civilian casualties as well. And over the summer, the situation started to stabilize. Unlike in the eastern Ukraine, there was actually no staff shortage because, as Dr. Zub said, many cancer specialists and all clinics from Donbass, for instance, they have actually relocated to Lviv region and started operating here. So, and since then, the surge of internally displaced persons that we saw in the first weeks of the war has subsided over the summer. In March, April, we had new visits. The number of new visits increased approximately tenfold. And since then, we saw about 7,000 patients who were consulted in my camp.
Okay. We're sorry to miss Roman's point of view.
It's a different way.
Oh.
I'm sorry?
No, please continue, Roman.
Oh, I'm sorry. And so the administration started purchasing new equipment. So we had one linear accelerator bought just before the war. And now another one is to be installed in February 2013. As I know, it was already paid for. Another thing, we purchased at least 4 new laparoscopic towers, and that was meant to shorten the hospital stay for our patients. There is a trend for a more minimally invasive treatments that reduces the length of stay and complications. There is also a fundraising campaign to purchase a PET CT scanner because there were only 3 of those machines working in Ukraine before the war. 2 are still working in Kyiv region, but again, because of the problems right now, the travel to those locations is problematic. But the surgical care was largely unaffected over those months in the West. And actually right now, we even see a 10% increase of the number of surgical cases performed compared to the year before the war. What we're facing is the shortage of single-use surgical supplies like energy devices and staplers, things that the government is not able to afford for everyone who comes to the hospital, so we are seeking external funding to secure them right now. And foreign aid reached the hospital, but was limited because we understand that we compete with assistance to military hospitals. And we did receive some hospital beds, infusion devices, ultrasounds, but again, this assistance was largely limited. The radiology treatment is still working right now with increased load, but now they have a waiting list, which was non-existent before the war. So people have to wait for about 2 weeks to start the treatment right now. And I spoke about those linear accelerators being installed, and the administration plans to phase out the old cobalt machines, which is definitely a good things for the future. When we speak about chemotherapy, the situation after the start of the war actually improved for some time because some of the warehouses were relocated to the West, and we even saw a surge, even in an excess of some targeted drugs and immunotherapy drugs, because some of the pharmaceutical companies were actually donating them for free. But right now, since we used most of the supplies that we had for the year of most common chemotherapy drugs, we have now shortage of those. So we definitely need to get them from somewhere, and we hope that maybe the international community will provide us with some basic chemo drugs for the coming months. So you all know what the current problems are. Russia has started overt major war crimes right now against civilian infrastructure. We lost power in Lviv yesterday. 80% of the city was without electricity. Right now, I can't stream my video just because of that, because I lost power while I was talking to the organizers. So what we do right now in the hospital, we have power generators, and actually over 400 of them were supplied by partners to hospitals in Ukraine. But on generators, some power-hungry machines like radiation therapy machines, CT scanners, MRIs are unavailable, so we can't use them for hours sometimes. And this, along with the air raid times and curfews, are definitely hampering the operations of medical clinics. So, and my view for the long-term effects, we heard even today that we will see increased mortality in the coming years, and that's due to delayed diagnosis and gaps in treatment. We know from a well-established study in Europe that a 4-month delay in treatment, which happened in Ukraine for many patients, will bring in excess deaths for colon cancer of over 600 people in Ukraine and over 1,200 people patients for missing adjuvant chemo for breast cancer, for instance. So these are huge numbers. And that's also, there are also other things that will happen. Some people got suboptimal treatments. That's because they were operated in a nearby hospital with lack of expertise. And also we will lack trained physicians because most of the training programs were interrupted. And that's also a huge problem. So I will finish with my predictions for the future and the needs. I think that as victory approaches, and this definitely looks like that, more people will be coming back to Ukraine, and we will have to deal with the resultant influx with our infrastructure. And I think that the way out is to integrate Ukraine into European cancer system, because this will facilitate exchange of expertise and also exchange of maybe even financial help and restoration of care. And in general, I think that in order to mitigate further health catastrophe, it's necessary to drive out the invaders and restore Ukrainian sovereignty, because otherwise the situation may repeat itself, and I'm afraid it may repeat itself further west. So not to picture that grim future, I still hope that, not even still, but I hope that Ukraine will win in the short term, and I will be able to join maybe next year this conference in person. And I thank you again for all your support and for organizing this conference and for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Roman. What the views expressed by Valerie, Anna, and Roman is that the impact of the war in Ukraine continues on cancer patients and healthcare professionals. This stresses the needs for us to intensify the efforts in order to address the mounting challenges and altered needs that Ukrainian cancer patients and Ukrainian healthcare professionals are facing in Ukraine and in neighboring countries. Now, let's turn to Richard Sullivan, who has extensive experience of managing cancer care in war situations such as Ukraine and before that in Syria. So, Richard, in your perspective, what has happened so far? What is really needed now, and how does the building back might look like in the future?
Andreas, thank you very much indeed. Let me begin by just saying that what is happening in Ukraine is unique. There is an idea that somehow we have insights into how to deal with cancer and palliative care in conflict. But the reality is, for every new ecosystem, every new conflict, that experience is almost unique. And despite the fact that this is, not the first time this has happened in Europe, if you remember old enough, for the Balkans Wars, we had very little corporate memory about what worked and what didn't. Most of the insights at the moment within cancer care, within conflicts, come from ecosystems which are very, very different from what's going on in Ukraine. The narco wars in Mexico, the wars that are across the Middle East. And they've given us some insights into how we should adapt. But the reality is we are dealing with something that we're having to learn as we go along. I think one of the big commonalities here is the different therapeutic geographies. One of the issues with war and conflict is their crisis multipliers. What you see is patients and cancer services and health services having to rapidly adapt to radically changing situations. And that is one of the big learnt lessons from previous conflicts, is that you have to have a system which is very, very fast to adapt. Now, I think what's extraordinary about Ukraine really has been the speed in which that adaptation has taken place. Right at the beginning, and Anna mentioned this, the reaction of the patient organizations to adapt to the situation, to move patients around as they needed to be, the speed of the international community in helping that, the speed of the government in Ukraine in also having to adapt to that as well, I think is a masterclass. And actually, there's probably a great deal of research and learning we need to take from that to understand how it happened, how the best practice emerged, and how that can help other conflicts around the world adapt. So I think that's one of the first things to say is these new therapeutic geographies and also the adaptation. And it's embarrassed Anna here. Anna and others have been interviewed by eCancer, some excellent interviews that are really worth listening to, because a lot of this is human intelligence, is qualitative insights. I think one of the things everyone's struggling with at the moment is how to plan for what is continuing to be an extremely difficult situation. You've already heard from Roman, and again, this is an experience, sadly, we've seen around the world, that the Russian tactics have changed, and they've changed because they're now hitting critical civilian infrastructure here and directly and indirectly damaging at scale healthcare, including cancer care. And let's be absolutely blunt about this. This is a violation of international humanitarian law. But this is the reality we're living in today. Now, planning to keep services going there is very, very difficult. We've had some learnings from colleagues across the Middle East in terms of hardening of facilities, moving surgery underground, having autonomous energy and water supplies. But as you heard from Roman, that will only go so far. And particularly with cancer technologies, as you said, they're very power hungry. So an awful lot of technologies get knocked off even with short power outages or short water outages. So that is just one of the realities. But in the meantime, of course, and you've heard from Dr. Zub, is actually planning for the future. I think one of the mistakes talking to colleagues when we look back and say the Middle East and some of the learnings from Turkey and Jordan is we didn't plan early enough for the long-term impacts of reconstruction. And I think it's really reassuring to hear that already the international community is talking about long-term planning, because it's not enough to start thinking about this when the bullets and the bombs have stopped. You've got to think about this now, because this is years, if not decades, worth of infrastructure reconstruction, and particularly rebuilding resources. And you asked me about the future here. I think it's already been mentioned. One of the things we always see this as negative, and I dread to use the word silver lining in conflict here, but I'm going to say that. One of the potential silver linings is you can think anew and afresh about how you want your cancer services delivered. You don't have to start from a historical contingency. You can decide where you want to place new cancer centers. You can decide how to be more rational about how your patients flow, where you want to put new LINACs, for example. And I think part of that rationality requires some foresight around building national cancer control plans, but also, dare I say, a bit of realism here. Roman already mentioned the fact that there were many, many patients who now will present with very late-stage disease. And for the foreseeable future, the system is going to have to cope with that. That is much more expensive disease to treat. That requires greater investments in palliative care. It also probably will require some very hard political decisions about prioritization. Which cancers and which cancer patients are truly savable in the immediate and the medium term, and which, sadly, are not. But it also, again, the silver lining being there is where would you might want to put your complex cancer surgery rather than having it in the same place. So, there's lots of positives here. This is a future that will be determined by the people of Ukraine. But I want to end where Roman ended, which is this future is only possible if we see this war ending and we see the victory of Ukraine. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Richard, for this insightful perspective, which helps us to understand how the impact of the war in Ukraine manifests itself on the ground. So now let's think about the EU's response and the future work to support Ukraine, particularly as it looks to EU membership. We are delighted to have with us Sandra Galina, Director General of DG Sante. Please let us know your perspective, Sandra, on what the EU is doing to support Ukrainian cancer patients and healthcare professionals, as well as in countries neighboring Ukraine, and what the next steps might look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. And I'm humbled to be here this afternoon, because on the one hand, we have authorities on cancer, we have patients, and we have Ukraine. Ukraine, which is absolutely, as it was just said, it's a unique situation. It's a unique situation, which brings to an extreme what is already a very difficult situation. So I'm humbled and I'm very honored. So I wanted to be here in person. I'm here in person also with colleagues also from HADEA, that is the agency that tries to help with the money, because without money, let me say, we are all coming short to our promises. So I thank you, Andreas, for the invite. The European Cancer Organization is a star organization for cancer, so I would not have missed this opportunity. And let me mention Mike, who is, I would say, a star. We've been working with him non-stop, so I would not have missed this opportunity. Now, I want to digress a bit and to say what is happening in Europe for the cancer arena. The cancer arena, and here a digression is important because obviously the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and Commissioner Kyriakides, they have made cancer their priority. You may have heard the stories. They had cancer either themselves or in the family, as the president used to say about her sister. So, they were very sensitive. But, we in DG Sante, we sometimes think that cancer is a big experiment also, because it's a bit the first time we go into one disease. Non-communicable disease, by the way, which is very complex because you have many non-communicable diseases. You have cardiovascular, you have many. So this is an experiment, and it's an experiment also because we need to work hand in hand with member states. It's the member states who put the money. It's the member states who help us achieve our dreams. So I would like to thank the member states and would like to thank them because this very morning, we had a committee when they approved further millions of euros to go to health for the work program of 23. No matter how you see things, I think that is a very important element, because without the generosity, and it's not generosity, it's self-interest in a sense, we have nothing. So let me be very clear, we need money to run this business. We also have, I would say, had the luck that at the beginning of this mandate, we were helped by huge pressure from the stakeholders, and I would like to thank many stakeholders. I see many of the associations here, because you made the case that we needed more money for health. And you remember that the EU for Health, well, it was at the beginning 11 million, then it went, a lot of money went to HERA, but we're still in DG Sante managing at least 4 billion for this area. So let me say 4 billion is not small money. And as I said, it's an experiment in one disease. So you need to be very, very clear that for us, we live in a world of timelines and I would say roadmaps with milestones. And for us, it's very important to see the absorption capacity of the associations, how they can somehow get our financing and get to match their financing, because let me say, there is a part that needs to come, is the famous 20% that we need to get, and I cannot believe that we will not get the 20% next to the 80% that is put by Europe. So we need to think that it is in the interest of member states and of everybody to put that small part next to it, because it's a matter of life or death for these organizations. The issue of where we are now, a few words, because everybody's saying what is happening in Europe. We are having the renewal of the 2003 Council recommendation on screening. We call it like that, but it includes many things. And, we have this sort of, I hope not an Icarus jump or flight, but we said it's not just 3, we won 6, and we were so successful. But then, screenings are costly. So member states also say, we need to make the best of our money, and so some screenings done in a certain way may not be perhaps. So we are having this discussion, and I suspect that in Ukraine it's the same. You have a pool of money, you have to make it go for many, and you need to make choices. And choices are simply not easy, not easy because, you know, the human case is for everybody, but we have to make some choices. The wisdom of the member states, I would say, is there. We will see how we end with this recommendation. We as Commission, we are fully committed to have a very ambitious package for cancer because, as I say, it's an experiment. But, you know, you need to understand that it's an experiment which goes far into the competencies of the member states because this is a magic word, care. Care. European Commission is not doing much care. We can do things, but care is member states, so we need to be very careful. I must say that Roman or Dr. Shiley, he was mentioning shortages. Sorry, we are having the same problems in Europe. We don't have some basic medicines for oncological treatment, or at least we have an access which is a patchy one in different member states. You can have things in one member state and none in the other. So don't dream when you will join the EU, because you will join the EU, don't dream that here it's like, you know, like sausages from the ceiling. We don't have all the medicines yet for everybody. We also don't have all the staff that we need, because that is also something that we have been working with WHO. They did a fantastic report on the shortages of staff, you know, and how to promote staff. My God, what a huge program there too. If you want a challenge or a challenging job, take my job and you don't dream at night. So for Ukraine, and here comes the specific part for Ukraine. We want to deliver what, you know, the title of the summit is what we would like to do, you know. It's to deliver effective and equitable. Equitable means that those who have less should have much more. So it's not equal, it's equitable, if you realize the difference. And it's equitable care. Member states, please bear with us. We want to go with the care together. And the work together means that in our account, together means that in the future we will have somebody else in the family, you know? So together means we will have Ukraine. So for the budget, this is certainly a challenge because, you know, we have had this aggression, this barbaric aggression that is destroying, and, you know, Richard just said it, it's against anything that we have seen in law, but it's against humanity. I mean, they are destroying deliberately, I would say, facility structures, civilian structures, and, you know, all the hospitals that they can. So I hope we will have the money to build new systems. So it's not rebuild, as you said in your speech, you know, Dr. Zub, not rebuild. We are building new. Perhaps, as Richard was saying, you have choices. I don't think you have many choices because, you know, we also don't want to have hospital deserts. We want to have hospitals where they are needed. You cannot have a hospital at 2,000 kilometers from your people. I mean, it's so there will be choices that will be very political, and we know about political choices. So we have the privilege to work, I would say, with a network of, I would say, health stakeholders. It's the first thing we did after the Russian invasion. We created this network, and let me thank the stakeholders, because we, Commission, we cannot do much. We are somehow here in our offices, but it's through the stakeholders, perhaps in many respects, it's thanks to stakeholders in Ukraine, so NGOs that can go into Ukraine, or I would say help that comes from civilians in Poland. I would say I have witnessed stories of generosity and solidarity that, you know, beggar belief. So let me say I am really always moved. I try to contain my tears, but I'm always moved by these stories because we are bureaucrats. We cannot do this. So you do what we cannot do. So at the end, I want an applause for all the stakeholders. So we will try to support Ukraine, but also Moldova. Because, you know, the plan was to get to Moldova, perhaps from somebody. It was nice to get a corridor, to get to Moldova and all the Russians that look like they have been in Moldova. Now, Moldova is only getting the influx of Ukrainian refugees, thank God. But this is, I would say, I want to communicate that we try to avoid duplication of efforts, because this is also something when you have huge masses of stakeholders. We as Commission, the best that we can do is to avoid that everybody tries to do the same thing. So we are trying in as much as we can, and I would like to thank my director, John Ryan, who is going through all these webinars to try to organize. And, I must say all the stakeholders have been particularly good. I must mention ERNs, the European reference networks. They're fantastic. The European Federation of Nurses Associations. We would not be here without them. They are fantastic. The acts of generosity of these people go beyond what I can say here. We have here Bettina from the Melanoma Patient Network Europe. They have been fantastic in offering help for Ukraine and even beyond. And I cannot go without mentioning Eurordis, rare diseases. They do fantastic work. So together with the European Cancer Organization, these stakeholders, these people have helped us immensely. We cannot do it ourselves. We can find the money perhaps, and even there perhaps. I don't want to be invidious or creating problems, because there are at least 100 organizations in this network. So imagine it's huge. It's not just what I have mentioned. And in a sense, we try to reach and to foster the partnerships that can give the help to Ukraine and Moldova, and to try to support the refugees. So this is really a very immediate part. For cancer, I must say, we have, I would say, a big and a tall order, because cancer, as was said here, cancer does not wait. The cancer battle, and it is very good that you made the sort of parallelism with war and cancer. For us, it's taking this whole discussion of cancer in this session, I think, to a completely new level. You have to put next to it the stress and the shortages, but I would say also the oppression of perhaps having to evacuate people, not having the families with them. So let me say we have had this system, and again, I thank the member states for offering beds. But, many of the patients wanted to stay in Poland because Poland is easy to reach by the families. It's easy to go back. So again, let us thank Poland for the generosity in welcoming what was 4 million people, in overnight. So very big generosity. In many respects, what has happened, and we can see that, cancer care has been put on hold, no matter what we can say here. The treatment has been done or not done in a total disruption of families. What we see is that there are some cases which have been unfortunately treated very late, and we have just had Roman saying there will be many deaths at the end of the day. We don't have a corporate memory of what we did in the Balkans, but let me say for COVID, it was clear that there were millions. Then everybody has different reports, 8 million, whatever. I mean, it depends on where you put the cursor, but many of the cancer patients in Europe did not get that treatment because of COVID. So it was not a war, but we have a clear perception that when there is disturbance, cancer is one of the first diseases that disappears from the screen, because the patient, has other moments of urgency. We will launch, I would say, what we can. We have 28 million, of euros of calls that have been launched specifically for Ukraine. I would say it's huge money, but at the same time, as I said, we need to be able to have the tenders, to have the offers, to see what can be done. The money can be there, but we need the people who fill these tenders. We will be launching another specific module addressing Ukraine. I have here Marina, who will be helping me. All these calls are open to Ukrainian stakeholders, so you can put down your offer for this tender. We will be helping you in as much as you can. We are very mindful of what is I would say, setup for the EU for Health program and for what you need to do. So I hope that, by next year we will not only have Roman here, the doctor who just spoke, but we will have many, many real patients who will be saying, without the treatment that I was granted, I could not have survived. So time is of the essence, and beating cancer is already a challenge, but beating cancer in a situation of a barbaric aggression like in Ukraine is almost an impossible task. But Slava Ukraini, we will do it.
Thank you, Sandra, for sharing the European perspective on the matter and for reminding us that the healthcare roadmap is bumpy, it's difficult, it's challenging. As you said, it's full of timelines and milestones, but it is the enthusiasm and the determination that people like you bring that actually make things happen. So thank you. Moving to medicine shortages have been a big topic during the war. And Andy is here from FPR to tell us more about this topic. Andy, in your perspective, how difficult has it been to get cancer medicines into Ukraine?
Thanks, Andreas, and yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really, like Sandra, honoured to be here. I noticed when you offered your job, no one took that offer, so I saw that. I think that's telling. So my grandmother used to say to me, "In the worst of times, you see the best of people," and I think that's something that we've really seen in the way that the communities have come together. I remember February the 24th vividly. I was out for dinner. It was my birthday. I think my daughter said, "Have you seen what's happening?" We get our news and information from TikTok because I have 3 teenagers, and within hours, I think Europe's perception of its own self, its integrity, its security, all of those things changed. And then, as Richard said earlier, how do you respond quickly, and what were the challenges that you needed to respond to? So from an industry perspective, the supply chains which we had established and developed over many years disappeared overnight. So not only that the infrastructure has gone, the damage to healthcare facilities, but if you imagine having a warehouse in a particular location where your stocks are sitting, no longer can you access that. You don't have the drivers to be able to move those medicines around. And we knew we had to respond incredibly quickly. And it was one of those moments where you saw colleagues come together very quickly in order to solve that. So the result of that, and I think Roman touched on it, is we're up to just about 29 million packs of medicines that have been donated purely by FPR members. We saw different phases in that, so in the early phase, and I have to huge credit to the Ministry of Health in Ukraine, who provided us with regular lists of what was needed. Every week we would get an updated list. And in the early phase, as you can imagine, it was things like painkillers, like antibiotics, like insulin that were needed very quickly. But that then extended into medicines and indeed vaccines that were required for much more long-term planning. The routes for that initially was mainly through NGOs, because they were used to operating in areas of conflict. And it was the fastest route in. So organizations like Direct Relief, Tulip Foundation, Red Cross, and so on, that had that expertise in terms of logistics in conflict zones. That was the fastest way. But we also saw, and I think, Bettina, you were instrumental in your field, but we saw it across a number of therapy areas, how quickly patient organizations, clinical organizations came together to map out the journeys and the pathways of displaced people living with those conditions and others, and how could we come together. So I think industry in total, we put forward around $300 million of aid, either financial or in-kind support or expertise. And we saw a lot of really interesting solutions come up. So one of the things we saw was all these people having to leave Ukraine and coming to Poland and other places. When they get their medicine, the patient information leaflet is not in their own language. But because of European law, where it's displayed, not your law, so just in general, okay, you have to, the patient information leaflet is in the language of the country where it's dispensed. So, but because of some flexibility, we were often moving medicines so that we could get medicines quickly to all these people coming. It might have come from Italy, be dispensed in Poland and given to a Ukrainian patient. So how do you handle that? So a group of companies came together, developed a technology. You know, a medicine pack has a serial code in it. You have an app, you scan the serial code, and you get the patient information leaflet in Ukrainian language. Just practical, simple support we had. I see colleagues from Novartis in the audience set up a patient education service. I know colleagues from Roche established a 24-hour helpline. Just lots of practical examples about how people could come together and support. But I think a number of people mentioned now we have to look forwards, and we have to look towards the long term. And I know the FPR Oncology platform in partnership and with the support of ECHO, which we're very grateful for, has developed a report by IQVIA to look at the impact of the war on cancer care, both in Ukraine and in the surrounding states, which is going to be published in early December. And some of the themes that I hear from colleagues are clearly coming out in that research straight away. You know, the lack of availability of digital health records, for example, is really difficult. Language barriers, you know, we've already touched on. But these, I'm confident these are issues that we can solve as a community, and that report will make some recommendations about how we do that. Clinical trials is another area, you know, dear to us, that we've seen huge impacts, and it's often the vehicle where you can get access to the latest treatment and participate in these trials. Trials were going up and up in Ukraine over the years before this terrible invasion, and we've seen impact predominantly on logistics. So how do you get clinical trial materials and resources to the sites? But also, you know, Kharkiv, Dnipro, you know, really big clinical trial sites, of course, impacted by what we've seen. So looking forward, I think I would echo many of the comments that we've heard today. The end of this lies in peace. It lies in a free Ukraine. It lies in the end of the war. But also we can start now, as Richard said, in terms of our planning. How do we look at Ukraine's accession to the EU? What support can we give? Particularly around, you know, for us, where is our expertise in medicines policy and other areas? How can we support and develop that? But it's been one of those moments in your career as you're helping coordinate this that you're glad, you know, that you can do something, but you're wishing you didn't have to. Thank you very much.
Hello again. So we're coming towards the end of this session from our ASCO ECO special network on the Ukraine. If you'd like to get involved, please contact either ECO or ASCO. And I'm delighted to announce that ASCO and the European Cancer Organization have just signed a special collaboration agreement based on our work in the Ukraine, but now moving into many other areas. Andreas, it's a pleasure to work with you on this and the ECO team, and thanks for the collaboration so far.
Thanks, Eric. We're not letting Bettina leave yet, so I will be handing over to Bettina for her own perspective on the topic. So please.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I went out of order. I blew it.
No worries. Bettina will be bringing her perspective from patient organizations outside Ukraine. So Bettina, please.
Thanks for that. I would have been very upset because I tell you, sitting in an hour on these chairs is not a pleasure.
So Bettina, I'm totally sorry. I blew it. You know, I've got this complicated outline, and I'm just, you know.
I'm the last one.
Okay.
Okay. Joking aside, I tried to be fast, and as you know, I can speak very fast. I would like to give you a little bit of complementary perspective to what you have heard from Anna about what patient organizations did when the war started. And I would like to take this a little bit to the role of civil society and us as citizens and our capacity at civil society when something like a war happens. Unfortunately, I share Anna's pessimism that this will not be the last time. It's not long ago we had COVID, or maybe we still have COVID and we have just forgotten. And now we have war, and I think it is wise to prepare for what's coming next. So we've heard about lots of great initiatives, but we were way ahead of them. So our discussion started the day the war started. We have colleagues in Ukraine. These are people of us. These are people of our networks. These are oncologists we work with. These are patients and families we're in contact with. And what do you do when disaster strikes? The first thing you do is you check on the people you know to check whether they are okay. And very soon after that, it was our Romanian colleagues and it was our Polish colleagues who came and said, what do? We have these people arriving, there are cancer patients among them. And I'm definitely not the one you should be speaking to when you want to see or really hear in detail what patient organizations have achieved in the war, because we have the colleagues here from speak to Anita about what childhood cancer has done, speak to what our Romanian colleagues have done in receiving patients, and that was way more than just young cancer patients, right, Katie? We have colleagues from Ukraine here. If you want to hear what you do in a disease like CML, where you need continuous drug supply, what our CML advocates have done, I think the only reason I'm standing here is that I'm one of these persons who is in the middle and in the gaps and who organizes things. And this is what I did when the war started. So we started having daily calls, 9 o'clock calls, and we started putting our resources together. We built a big mural where we collected all our resources. If you go to Poland, where does a patient have to register? Where do you get free transport? Where do you get healthcare? Who are the people to contact? And we started that setting up before March started. So we were way faster than anyone else. And I think that is something that is very important to remember. And I say we, but it's not really fair to say it was just the patient organizations. It was many, many people, local people, and there are many people across here in this room, actually, who have contributed massively personally in their capacity, in their professional capacity. And I'm pretty sure that you don't want to be named, but at this point, I really, really want to thank you what you have done by pulling your own personal networks. And one of the lessons I think that we have all realized is when in times of crisis, what you build on are the networks you build in good times. It's the relationships you have, people you trust, people who care about you and you care about. So networks are extremely important. That was the first lesson I think we all have learned. The next one was your, what we call maybe digital ability, because we had an established set. We have, our patient communities have set up a network, it's called Weekend, where we have a set up communication platform. We know how to reach each other. We know who is the person in charge, and we just build on top of that. It was very hard to work with people who still operate on email that they check once a week. In a situation of emergency, you need people who are able to at least operate WhatsApp. And that really becomes an issue. So I think for the next time, or generally for our communication, having established channels that are secure, because you might find this maybe not, you wouldn't expect that, but the first thing we actually did was a risk assessment. What types of platforms can we use, which are safe, which cannot be hacked so easily, because we operate with vulnerable people. If someone takes up our networks, then many people are charged. So I think that is something else too. So capabilities, your networks, and how well are you communicating, and how well are your channels set up. Then the next thing I would like you to be aware of, the plight of patients, like civil society and patients in Ukraine is great. But we also have patients among the displaced. And it is also affecting the societies in what we call the first line of help, the first line of receipt. We see a great impact on the healthcare systems in Poland and in Romania. And I'm sorry to say, don't trust the official reports. Because what you get to hear is they get the same treatment as all our citizens. Talk to the patients on the ground. The waiting lines there are huge. And what we're going to see is an increase of cancer burden in these countries. Every time we have a problem like this, climate change, digital transition, the focus goes of health. There was I've just looked this up for a different talk. We lost 199 billion euros due to cancer in 2018. Half of that was carried by our healthcare systems, the other half was carried by society. How can we not consider this a huge problem? We talk about recovery, and then we go, oh, we cut this on cancer because we have something else to do. That makes no sense. So look at the amount we invest compared to the problem we're trying to solve, and then spot the difference. So I think that is something for us. Health is an asset to our societies. After COVID, I had actually expected everyone had gotten the call, but apparently not. So now we are worried about our patients in these countries who are kind of where healthcare systems are under extreme pressure. So I think for resilience, and I'm trying to find a positive hook knock and that you can get to the break, is that I believe we have proven to ourselves that we're able to react. I think we were all a little bit surprised at what we were actually able to pull off. Because at first when the war started, people come and say, what are we doing? It's like, how am I supposed to know what we're doing? I was lucky enough never to live in a war. And I think many of us felt like this, what are we doing? And then we started, and then you can see what you can build and what type of difference you make. So I think building on that, we should prepare, we have to become more agile, we have to become more resilient, we need to build societies and healthcare systems that can absorb shocks that we're coming. I'm more positive, and I know this might sound odd, but I'm actually more positive than when the war started that we actually will be achieving this. And with that, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Bettina. Well, apologies, everyone. The session is overrunning, and we don't want to miss the keynote by Commissioner Gabriel. So the Commissioner is here, and she's going to be giving her speech. Thank you. Let's welcome Commissioner Gabriel.
Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, dear professors, dear members of the Parliament, researchers, first of all, thank you very much for this invitation. I would like really to warmly thank the European Cancer Organization for organizing this important event. If I understood, there is a lot of emotions during the previous panel sessions, but I would like really to say that the active participation of all interested parties is exactly what we need to make, and I'm switching immediately to the Horizon Europe mission on cancer, and of course, the Europe's Beating Cancer Plan successful. Well, you know that the mission on cancer has set the overarching goal of improving the lives of more than 3 million people by 2030 through prevention, cure, and improving quality of life for patients and their families. But how will we achieve this ambitious goal? Of course, here I would like to express my gratitude to the chair of the board of the mission, Professor Ricciardi, and to say very clearly that I expect from the new board to be very active and to be really efficient for the implementation now of the mission, because we are entering into a crucial phase from the co-creation to the co-implementation, and we need every one of you. Because it's true is that the objective of the mission is to build a pan-European innovation ecosystem to beat cancer through innovation by bringing together member states and regions, different sectors and disciplines, investors, citizens, including cancer patients and their caregivers, to create real and long-lasting impact. Don't be surprised. I mention immediately the keyword innovation, because today, as Commissioner responsible not only for the mission on cancer, but for innovation too, I will try to make a link between the new wave of innovation and how that can be beneficial for the implementation of the mission on cancer. Because here, I must say that when we talk about innovation, we talk immediately after on ecosystem, and cancer networks like the European Cancer Organization are key elements of this innovation ecosystem to exchange knowledge, best practices, and bright ideas in the field. So funding bright ideas is precisely first what the European Research Council does, with scientific excellence as the only criterion. Frontier research on cancer is a critical component of the innovation ecosystem because it delivers scientific breakthroughs that are later the foundations of deep tech startups. Therefore, it is of paramount importance to ensure that scientists, work with startups to ensure rapid development of the innovative solutions for cancer. And this is precisely one of the focus of the new European Innovation Agenda that we adopted in the month of July. I would like here to give you an example coming from the COVID-19 pandemic. One key example is the ERC grantee Ugur Sahin, who later became co-founder of the startup BioNTech and adopted the messenger RNA technology to develop Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine with 9 months of the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. But after the example of BioNTech, many people eventually understood why it's crucial to have a thriving innovation ecosystem behind the startups as they grow, notably in the area of cancer. We also realized how critical is for us, for health companies, for startups, for cancer organizations to collaborate. And here really, maybe that will sound a little bit provocative, but what is new with the new wave of innovation, and for me that's a chance, an opportunity for our mission on cancer to advance more rapidly, is that we need close collaboration, not only between big and small companies, not only between the authorities that will deliver all the necessary authorizations and regulators. We need, since the very beginning, here to form this ecosystem. And I must say that with our mission on cancer, that will be a real challenge. Are we really able to transform with the different realities in our member states, the difficulties, the differences, this into a pan-European innovation ecosystem where this mission on cancer can be successful? And yes, here we need, again, to maintain very close links, not only between health organizations and startups, but to think about universities, because we need the skills and the competencies for those people that will help us to implement the mission. And yes, here I must say that from our side, that's a main challenge. The mission on cancer, and I will come now to this for the budget, for what's next, it's important to link it to the other crucial elements within Horizon Europe program in order to maximize the impact. Maybe not obvious, maybe the links are not spontaneous, but I think that we are giving us additional chances to succeed if the mission on cancer is working in synergy with the European Research Council, as I mentioned it, or with the new deep tech wave of innovation and the innovation agenda. At least we'll try. That's something new, but I think, again, that for us as Europe, we can build on some strengths. That's the excellence of our science. That's already the very good data that we have, even thanks to all of you and the different organizations. But it's true that somehow we need to change the pace. Now, with this link with the new European Innovation Agenda and the mission on cancer, I think that, yes, one of the main challenges, it will be to increase this innovation cohesion across regions by providing member states, regions, with the tools and conditions needed to accelerate and strengthen innovation to reduce inequality in cancer treatment for patients across Europe. We know how difficult is the situation on the ground, but with innovation, I think that, yes, we can maybe find new ways to reduce these inequalities. And here I would like to share with you maybe more concretely 3 examples on how the mission on cancer can benefit from the actions included in the new European Innovation Agenda. First, in the flagship 3 of the Innovation Agenda, we'll support member states to combining cohesion policy and Horizon Europe instruments. A first pilot on this combined use will soon be published in the Cancer Mission Work Programme for the year 2023. Don't forget that we talk about this beautiful word synergy for many, many years, but for the first time this year, in the month of July, we published a guidelines is how we can use in synergy these different funds in order to tackle some of the main issues that are in our member states and in our regions. Second, the successful European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and its regional innovation networks across Europe will be key components in building this pan-European innovation ecosystem for cancer. And third, through Flagship 5 on the innovation agenda, the Commission will support member states and regions in designing and implementing better innovation policies. We'll scale up the successful projects to provide tailored services to implement cancer screening programs in certain countries, and I'm thinking here not only about Latvia and Slovakia. Furthermore, deep tech innovations through the mission on cancer will have a strong social innovation aspect by engaging with citizens, citizen organizations such as cancer charities. But it's true that, in fact, until 2023, the mission will provide 365 million euro in funding under 13 research and innovation core topics in the Horizon Europe mission work programs. Moreover, by June next year, we expect to have launched about 30 projects that will be working together in 4 clusters to deliver on the mission's 4 main objectives on understanding prevention, diagnosis and treatment, and quality of life. In addition, next year, the Mission on Cancer will launch national cancer mission hubs in member states, building on what exists and taking into account different national priorities. The purpose of these cancer hubs is aligned with the regional innovation valleys that we announced in the new European Innovation Agenda. They will support the member states in their work on research, innovation, and cancer control by bringing together stakeholders from different disciplines and engaging with citizens to bring innovation to the national, regional, and local levels. Overall, the actions and initiatives that I have highlighted today will help us better understand cancer, ensure equitable access to the necessary technologies, and improve the lives of patients and their families. So maybe it's time for me to stop and to conclude today's intervention with a call to action to all of you to work with us and assist us in carrying out the actions and initiatives presented. The Mission on Cancer has a very ambitious goal to provide tangible results that we can build on in our fight against cancer. But concrete and lasting impact will only be achieved if researchers, clinicians, patients, and citizens work together. Allow me here to express my full support to the work of my fellow Commissioner, Commissioner Kyriakides. We are really working hand in hand. What, again, I would like to underline is that this topic is high on the agenda. But it's true that 23 and 24, it's a crucial phase. For us, for the Mission on Cancer, as I already said it, the most important challenge is now to start to show results. Co-creation, co-designing, that was the right approach. That was the right signal, looking in the same direction. Now what we need, it's really to popularize the tools that we have in our hands, to be innovative, but above all, we need to stay united. Not only innovation or Horizon Europe program will help to tackle this challenge, we need more synergies, and that's why I dare today to introduce to this topic the topic of the deep tech innovation and the new European innovation, because again, I believe that now with innovation, we are giving us just more chances to succeed. Thank you very much, and I would like really to wish you a very successful summit with fruitful networks and enlightening discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner Gabriel, for sharing your vision, your plans and actions on how the innovation agenda can support the implementation of the EU cancer mission. We know the commissioner needs to catch a flight, so we don't want her to miss her flight. So safe travels, and once again, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your views. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, if nothing else in European Cancer Organization, we are versatile, so back to the normal route of our program. And at this point, I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their experiences and their views on this topic. I would like to thank my co-chair, Eric, for co-chairing this session with me. Also, you for being here, and also our viewers watching online. We're going to be taking 10 minutes break, and we'll be back for the next session. Thank you all. Thank you.